Okay. Hi, my name is Richard Rick Cogley. I grew up in Aaronsville, and I inherited Lou from my late parents, Dick and Dorothy Cogley. When I was a kid in the 50s and 60s, Lou and Pat were just two of my parents' friends. But after I went off to college, to Franklin and Marshall and not to Gettysburg, I developed intellectual interests that were quite similar to Lou's. And so we, in fact, became good friends. I went to Yale Divinity School, largely because Lou had gone there. And then, like him, I also got a PhD in religion. So, and whenever I would return to this area to visit my parents, or after my father's death at 88, Lou was one of the speakers at his memorial service. To see my mother, I would try to have lunch with Lou. He was always so much fun to talk to. He made you seem as though you were the most important person in the world when you were talking with him. And I'm proud to say that I was Lou's student, even though I did not go to Gettysburg College. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Leslie Moss. My husband was George Moss, who is a student of Lou's here at Gettysburg. I never had the opportunity to have Lou as a professor, but George did, and he was a very influential person in both of our lives. Lou made a human being out of George, who was a very uptight, displaced person from Romania and Germany, and Lou really helped him become a wonderful human being. George recently died, and I wanted to tell Lou how important he was to him and to me, but I didn't get a chance. So this is my chance. Thank you, Lou.
Hi, I'm Sharon Kaya. When I was a student, a non-traditional student at Gettysburg College, I had the opportunity to take a class, as Spanish was my major, in Latin American civilization. And one of the books I read was Me llamo Rigoberta Menchú y así me nació la conciencia, which literally translated means, my name is Rigoberta Menchú, and this is how my conscience was born. I did not have any background in knowing about social issues. And I had the opportunity at Gettysburg College to do a summer study, which was led by Lou Hammann in Mexico and Nicaragua. We spent 7 weeks, 1 week in Cuernavaca, and then 6 weeks in Nicaragua, 1 week in Managua, Nicaragua. We spent 1 week with a family in León. And one of my favorite remembrances of interaction with Lou was we were living with a family, and my developed world sensibilities were kind of shaken up by the experience, eating just corn tortillas and having rice and beans for every meal that we had. The tortillas were rather large, and after a few days, I just couldn't make myself eat another one. And it was, I think, rude to say that I didn't want to eat it, but I went to Lou, who was living with a family a few doors down, and I said, I have a problem. And he looked at me, and I said, I can't eat another tortilla. And looking to Lou for a wise suggestion, he looked at me in his deadpan way and said to me, looking me straight in the eyes, I hide mine under my shirt. And I was so relieved to know that it wasn't just me, that I was alone in this feeling, that he was with me in this, and I would be able to make it through. My other remembrance of Lou in Nicaragua was that we spent his 60th birthday in a town, a small town, Santa Maria del Peñón. And from that town, we were to launch a trip of 12 kilometers up a mountain to a little comarca, which is like a village, but smaller. And we were going to ride, we were switching between a horse, a donkey, or walking. And by far the easiest thing to do, which I found later, was walking, because my legs and my knees and my hips hurt so much from going up on a horse or a donkey. Well, we spent some time up there getting to know the people, and then we had prepared some drinks and some cakes to celebrate Lou's birthday at the bottom, back in Santa Maria del Peñón. And so we were gathered in a room. Lou sat down. They were in our chairs, so we were kind of lying down, sort of. And as we started his birthday party, Lou fell asleep. So we celebrated his party without him, and eventually he woke up and there was nothing left, because the kids from the town were looking in the window, and we ended up sharing all his cake and his drinks with the kids. So those are my memories of Lou. Okay. This is a continuation of my last talk. What I didn't explain before was that the class that I was taking when I was in Mexico, Nicaragua with Lou and another professor, Peg Miracle, was the religion and politics of the Nicaraguan Revolution. And not being, I wouldn't have called myself a scholar or an academic. As a non-traditional student, I had the opportunity to take classes at Gettysburg College, which I am sure I never would have gotten into had I applied as a regular student. But having Lou present this aspect of the revolution and how religion was involved in it, and the way that he presented it and actually showed us how it was progressing in Nicaragua, really opened up my eyes and my consciousness about social justice, about even my faith, how I was to look at my faith in the future. And that's what I wanted to point out when I said that my consciousness was born. Here it was, and it's been an amazing ride ever since. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Emily Knowles Kellett. I'm here with my husband, Bill, and what I have to say is short. When I first moved to Gettysburg about 25 years ago to marry and raise a family, I also kind of forayed into the community and quickly was shown by Lou and Pat and a few other people's role modeling how much reward and how much possibility there was in leveraging the potential of the people around you. Anyway, so Pat and Lou both, but here I'll speak with Lou about Lou. It's actually Pat and Lou both. The word that came to mind after the first several years was that the nature of their network in so many diverse areas in the town and in the community and among family and among friends and those that Bill will also talk about is that they were an institution. It's, as a couple, they were their own institution. It was just the nature of the foundation. They had a foundation. They had decades in the community. They had, a future. They helped others grow and develop. And and it's a word that doesn't come to my mind for others that I know, but Lou, Pat, you are an institution in my mind. You'll always be. And here's Bill.
Hi, I'm Emily's husband, Bill, and I've known Lou since I was a little kid. I'm between Becca and Mary, and my father taught with Lou, and most important to me were the Pat and Lou always showed up when there was a cause. Probably if you were going to put a bet on whether they were there or not, they were at the top of the list of the people you would expect to be if you were be there, if you were carrying a sign, whether it was raining, snowing, whatever. If you were trying to fight for peace, for the environment, for a better government, for a better community, Lou and Pat were always there. Secondly, Lou helped found the local soccer league for kids here. The first year while I was in high school, we had about 100 kids. In the fall, that was in the spring. In the fall, we had about 880 kids. And Lou ref soccer games for me when I was in high school, for my stepson in the 80s. I have kids who played soccer in the 90s and kids who played in the aughts, and better than even odds, on any Saturday, Lou was reffing those games. My parents, a year ago today, had their 60th wedding anniversary celebration. Lou was there. He needed a ride home in the middle of the celebration because he was not feeling well. And I took him home, and somebody said, "You missed your parents' 60th wedding anniversary celebration to give Lou a ride home?" I said, "Lou was there on too many Saturdays for me not to do it." Thank you.
Very good. So my name is Ricky Czar. My grandfather was George Czar. Lou and my grandfather went to Yale Divinity College together. I didn't know that until more recently. My experience with Lou was actually at the tree farm growing up. I started when I was about 7, and I just always remember seeing him, and he always had a smile on his face, a good story to tell. But one of my favorite memories, I thought it would be fun to share, was when I was a kid, I would go out in the woods and help cut down the trees. That's fine. But I'd find these tiny little pine saplings, and I decided to make Charlie Brown Christmas trees. He encouraged me to be an entrepreneur. He helped me figure out how to set them up and sell them to people, fill up little Christmas balls with rocks so that they bend just right. It was, I don't know. He always had a way about him, and a way to make life just a little bit more interesting for those who he got to share it with. But I just thought it was worth sharing.
Okay. Lou loved poetry, so I've written a poem for him. This is Lou's funeral song. Somehow we thought you would live forever, even though at the end you were quieter and bent. Long stored images vie for space. It was 1963, you clad in a policeman's cape, escorting a crew of college folks to a Baltimore showing of Ulysses by James Joyce. You hanging on a Philadelphia street sign, stretching your back on our way to Fiddler on the Roof with students, and your delight at finding that Tevye, like you, had 5 daughters. Sharing champagne, gifts given for you performing weddings, our yard littered with corks. You conducted 2 weddings for me, but said you wouldn't do it again. Baptizing our children in the creek, celebrating life. It counted because you were ordained. Running to you with questions as I struggled to teach Dante. Theology parceled out in straggling answers. Writing dissertations, trading thoughts, scratching heads, pushing through to unexpected conclusions. It was the 70s, so we offered students another way of seeing the world. Teaching India was possible because you were exploring religion from the center to the fringe. Pursuing peace in so many ways. Nuclear freeze, meditation, global studies, utopian curricula, Craigie and Fairfield Mennonite Church. PPTP, we called you, permanent part-time pastor. Once a month, you treated us to sermons, small surprises from a convoluted mind. Then a summer of cooperative work with families, clearing thickets, fencing a pasture, stripping wallpaper, repairing a porch. Understanding the common good made it possible in Nicaragua, too. Potlucks with PGL or on the farm with DFA. Always open to community. Together, you and Pat took on mythic proportions for those privileged to know you. John Mulligan sums it up. Lou was such an open-hearted spirit and had an infectious enthusiasm for learning. He was homo ludens, man the player. Soccer was his love. You taught us how to love play, to run with words, our minds always the goal, our best selves the goalies. Thank you.
Couple of snippets about Lou. Lou's family was involved with the fish market on the Chesapeake Bay for many years. And in a discussion we had many years later, Lou had told us that he had never really been on the bay in a boat. And we had a sailboat, and we thought, this is the time to do it. So we had a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Lou was invited, and his daughter Mary and son-in-law Bill. We took off from the marina. The winds were not very strong. It was a very mild day. Now, normally Lou was talking a mile a minute, but after a little while on the bay, I noticed he wasn't talking at all. And I turned and looked at him, and if anyone had a green face at that time, it was Lou. And the next thing I knew, he was over the edge of the bed of the boat, getting rid of his lunch, his breakfast, and everything else. The other snippet happened during the 1970s when John Cage was giving a lecture and a workshop at Bucknell University. So we got a carload of people to go up to Bucknell. And Lou insisted on driving. Well, as soon as we got in the car, we had conversations going right and left, and it became very active. When suddenly we looked at where we were and we discovered rather than Bucknell, we had arrived in Frederick, Maryland. Lou was not a good one to drive and talk at the same time, but we loved him anyway. Thank you.